Maria Elena Santos stood quietly near the end of the audition line, her hands gently rubbing the small gold locket hanging around her neck. Inside was the only photo she had of her mother left after the typhoon that destroyed their home years ago. Every time nerves tightened her chest, she tapped the locket twice, a silent promise she made to herself when she left the Philippines. One day, Mama, I will sing on a real stage. Around her, the backstage area buzzed with excitement. Contestants warmed up, practiced routines, rehearsed lines, and some even recorded TikToks. Maria simply watched, softly humming to herself, her voice barely louder than a whisper. She wasn't flashy. She didn't have glitter makeup, perfect curls, or a large cheering squad. She had come alone, straight from her overnight caregiving shift, still wearing the same worn-out shoes she used to walk the halls of the nursing home. As she bent down to sip water from her small tumbler, a stack of papers suddenly scattered across the floor in front of her. A young girl, no older than 16, was scrambling to pick them up, her hands shaking with nerves. Without hesitation, Maria knelt and helped gather the sheets. Thank you, the girl breathed. Maria smiled warmly. First time auditioning. The girl nodded nervously. You'll do great, Maria said gently, her voice carrying a calmness that felt like a hug. The girl glanced at Maria's locket. Are you singing too? Yes, Maria replied softly. You don't look nervous. Maria laughed under her breath. Oh, I'm very nervous. But I promised my mom I would try, even if it scares me. The girl's shoulders relaxed. Then I'll try too. Maria squeezed her hand. Neither of them knew that kindness shared in a quiet backstage moment would soon echo across the world. When Maria Elena's name was finally called, her breath caught for a moment. She pressed her palm to her chest, feeling her heart thudding like a frightened bird trying to escape a cage. A stagehand gestured for her to walk forward. Maria inhaled deeply, whispered, "For you, Mama," and stepped toward the bright entrance that separated the backstage world from the AGT stage. As she walked, the noise of the backstage chaos slowly faded behind her, replaced by a wide, echoing silence. The curtains parted, and a flood of golden stage lights washed over her, instantly making her blink. She lifted a hand to shield her eyes as her silhouette appeared on the giant screens. The audience murmured, confused at first, because she looked like someone who might have wandered in from the hallways by accident. No flashy outfit, no bold presence, just a quiet woman with kindness in her eyes. She stood on the star-marked spot at center stage. A camera zoomed in, catching her nervous sigh, the slight tremble in her hands. Simon Cowell leaned forward with his usual mixture of curiosity and skepticism. What's your name? He asked, voice echoing across the theater. Maria Elena Santos, she replied softly, the microphone picking up the delicate tremor in her voice. And why are you here today? Simon continued. Maria swallowed hard. 1,000 memories flashed in her mind. Her mother singing in their tiny kitchen, the sacrifices she made working abroad, the loneliness of being far from home. She steadied herself. I'm here, to show that quiet people can still have loud dreams. A soft wave of emotion rippled through the audience. Even Simon's expression softened just slightly, a rare occurrence. The lights dimmed. The music cued. Maria closed her eyes. She was ready. A single spotlight settled over Maria, forming a soft halo around her. Her fingers tightened around the microphone, and for a heartbeat, the world seemed to stop. Then, she began. Her first note floated out like a feather drifting through still air, gentle, warm, angelic. The audience leaned in instantly. Her soprano voice carried a purity that wrapped around every ear in the room. Heidi placed a hand over her heart, smiling. Sophia whispered, beautiful, under her breath. Maria continued, her tone steady but emotional, as if she were pouring her entire soul into each syllable. The cameras zoomed in on her face, eyes closed, brow relaxed, completely immersed. Then, without warning, she opened her eyes. Everything changed. Her soft soprano dropped into a deep, resonant masculine voice, so powerful it reverberated through the theater like thunder. Gasps erupted everywhere. A man in the front row nearly jumped out of his seat. Howie shot up, pointing at her as if she'd broken the laws of physics. What? He yelled, laughing in disbelief. But Maria didn't break character. She switched back to her soft soprano flawlessly, then into the deep male tone again, performing a full duet between the two voices. It was like watching two people share one body, each voice telling its own story. Simon's jaw clenched, his version of stunned shock. He lowered his pen slowly, eyes locked on her. He had watched thousands of singers, but this was beyond technique. It was a miracle wrapped in humility. In the audience, a little boy tugged at his mother's sleeve and whispered, "Mom, is she magic?" Maria's voice climbed, soared, dipped, transformed, like she was weaving two worlds together on a single thread of breath. When the final note rang out, the room froze. Then the theater exploded. For one long, breathless second after Maria's final note faded, the world seemed completely silent. She stood there frozen, unsure if she had done well or made a fool of herself. Her hands trembled around the microphone, and she felt her knees weaken. Then, the entire theater erupted. People leapt to their feet so fast the cameras shook. Cheers boomed like waves hitting a shore. Some audience members were shouting, others were crying, and many were staring at her like they were witnessing something divine. Maria's eyes widened as thousands of faces rose for her, for her. Sophia wiped a tear. Heidi clapped above her head, shaking it in disbelief. Howie turned in a full circle as if asking the crowd, "Did you see that?" But Simon just stared at her. Not with judgment, not with critique, with something gentler, something rare. "Ah." Maria pressed her hand against her chest, overwhelmed. "Thank you," she whispered, though her voice was swallowed by the roar. Then, from backstage, the young girl she had helped earlier burst through the side curtains. She ran straight toward Maria without hesitation, the same papers clutched to her chest. Maria laughed through tears as the girl hugged her tightly. "You did it," the girl said, almost breathless. Maria cupped her cheek gently. "And so will you." At that moment, kindness flowed both ways. Then, something unexpected happened. A woman from the audience, wearing a bright red jacket, stood up holding a small folded Philippine flag. She made her way to the front, offering it with shaking hands. "We're proud of you," she said, voice trembling. Maria accepted the flag, pressing it against her heart, tears spilling freely now. For the first time in years, she felt seen. Not just as a worker. Not just as a nobody. But as someone who mattered. The cheers were still thundering when Simon finally stood up. The energy in the room shifted instantly. Everyone knew something extraordinary was about to happen. Maria, still holding the small Philippine flag against her chest, blinked through tears as she watched Simon step forward, his expression softer than anyone had ever seen on AGT. "Maria," he began, his voice steady, but warm, "I've judged this show for a long time. I've seen incredible auditions, but what you just did, I don't even have the right words for it." The crowd roared again, but Simon raised a hand gently, and the theater fell quiet. "You walked onto this stage like someone who didn't believe she belonged here," he continued. "And now, after hearing what you just did, you've proven that this stage was meant for you." Maria covered her trembling mouth. She couldn't move. She could barely breathe. She whispered, "Thank you," though her voice cracked. Simon nodded once. A small smile appeared, rare, genuine. "I think," he said, "the world needs to hear you." Then, in slow motion, he placed his hand over the golden buzzer. The audience screamed before he even pressed it. Maria's knees buckled. She shook her head as if she couldn't believe what was happening. And then, slam! Gold exploded from the ceiling, raining down in shimmering waves. The lights brightened, the music swelled, and Maria fell to her knees in the middle of the golden storm, crying into her hands. The young girl she helped backstage rushed to her again, wrapping her arms around Maria. "You helped me," the girl whispered, her voice trembling, "and now the whole world is helping you." Maria sobbed harder, lifting her face toward the falling confetti, each golden piece reflecting the dream she once thought was impossible. One woman, two voices, a heart full of kindness, and a moment that would stay in the world's memory forever.